Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to welcome back John Paul Mason to Acsom. How are you doing, JP?
Back to earth.
You've been a busy boy. You've been a busy boy over the last couple of weeks, haven't you?
Aye, it's been a bit mental. I didn't know if it was New Year or New York yesterday, so I didn't see the game on Saturday. I wasn't there. I was standing side the stage at Connect, anxiously refreshing my phone to see if we were going to get a late goal, and that didn't transpire. But
it didn't materialise. New York and New Year, Shrove Tuesday or Sheffield Wednesday. It's actually pre-Derby Thursday. That's what it is. There's loads to talk about. See, yesterday I completely realised that when you're in the midst of a transfer window, JP, you do a show at 12:30. It's out of date by 2:30 because we go and sign a player, you know. So we're going to be talking about that, how you feel that the transfer window has gone or is going, because it's not finished yet. And of course, we've got the Champions League draw tonight at 5 o'clock, and Celtic are the only Scottish club representing the nation in that draw, and representing Acsom is young James McKenzie. So what's happened is he's not getting flown to the draw, unfortunately.
I was going to say, is he going to be in like Monaco or Nîmes? That would be amazing.
Imagine we did that. People would be saying, you're making too much money. We've not got the budget for that, I'm sorry. But we do have the budget for him to get his free bus pass to Celtic Park because they've invited fan media, I guess, through to Celtic Park for the draw. There's going to be a player there. And I think they're filming it. I think they're filming the reaction and all that. So James is going through there to see who we get. You and I will be talking about wishes for and against that particular draw. It never tends to go the way you want it to go. And of course, we've got the big game on Sunday, JP, where obviously every single person watching this show will be watching it somewhere other than Ibrox Stadium. So we'll be looking at that and how we're going to look in terms of the starting lineup as well. And then peppered through the show, hopefully you can hit us with a few of your experiences over the last couple of weeks, because you know you're very humble. You just said you were at Connect, you were working at Connect, you were meeting people who you've probably idolized for years. It's been an incredible and I'm pretty sure surreal couple of weeks. Does it still feel surreal, JP? I always think it does. Even like when I'm walking up Sauchiehall Street right on Friday night, and the vision of Charlie Mulgrew, the gorgeous man that is Charlie Mulgrew, is walking down the street. And as I said at the time, it was almost like you had a ready break glow. You're just walking down the street and everybody walking past him was kind of going like that. That was surreal for me because he was walking into the venue to do a gig with Acsom. It still feels surreal to me, JP, when I meet my heroes.
It does, and it doesn't. I mean, you just obviously, I just find myself kind of really concentrating on what I'm going to say. You know, you don't want to say anything stupid because you know you're only going to get like a short window to speak to these people, and you may never ever see them again. I hope that's not the case, but you know, meeting like Innes from Primal Scream on Friday and having a chat with him about. I was telling him I was at the Motherwell game when they unveiled the Primal Scream banner, and
brilliant.
It was like, oh, that's it. It was like we could just chuck music after that. That's what he said. It was like.
That's immense. That is immense, isn't it?
Didn't really need to do anything else after that. It's happening. It was so buzzing about that still, and I was like, I realised as it was getting unfurled what it said, and I was like, no way. And then obviously you see the drone shot of it. So being able to speak to him about that and just having chat with him about the season and everything else, and that was before Saturday, obviously, because that was Friday night. And then just like meeting Sam from Future Islands as well. Quite surreal. Just chatting to him. He's an Everton fan. He picked Everton as his team. Really? Do you know that band, Future Islands? You ever heard them?
It's not a band I'm that familiar with, JP.
They were on Letterman, and their performance on Letterman is legendary, and it's got like millions of views because it just was so out there, and it really kind of put them on the map. And they, got a game after that. They'd been touring for a long time before that, but. Yeah, I was chatting to him. He was sitting in the dressing room. He's got a sore knee, so he was resting his knee on a chair, and he had his laptop and he was watching whatever the evening game was on Saturday night in the English Premier League. And I said to him, "I was football fan?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's like my team's Everton." And I was like, "Everton?" Like, how did that come about? He said he was at a festival one day and he found a channel that was showing like old English Premier League games, and he just like, there was an Everton game on where they won like from the 80s or something like that, and he just decided what he didn't want to choose like a big team like Man United or Liverpool or something like that. So he was like, I'm going to choose Everton. He's like, so I've been 10 years an Everton fan, and he's been to the ground, he's been to a game and all the rest of it. And yeah,
you know, I love that, JB, because people like yourself, me, even though I was reading a tremendous Twitter rumour a few days ago that I'm a Hibs fan. I love that. I don't know where they get these things from, right?
And Dunfermline.
And Dunfermline. I don't know how I get the time. Celtic, Dunfermline, Hibs. But, you know, I often wonder about choosing a football team, because I never chose a football team. I'm pretty sure you and many, many others listening to this didn't choose Celtic, right? And there's a great story, actually. Chaz Nuki Burden, who you'll know on Twitter, very, very prolific on Twitter. He's been on Acsom a couple of times as well, who decided, I'm going to be a Celtic fan. He had supported Arsenal for years. His story's brilliant, actually. He wrote a blog about it on Acsom.net. Go and seek it out. And the reasoning behind it. And I'd love to imagine that if we were in that situation, JP, where, like you say, someone from elsewhere drops into our country and then you're going to get into football, what team do you support? I'm pretty sure I would choose Celtic because of our heritage and because of what we are as a football club, and the story and the origins of that football club, the charitable cause that it was and is. And, you know, I'm confident I would still choose Celtic. But I love hearing about people choosing the football club, because it's not something you do, is it? It's just, it's in you before you even...
You say that. I did, and I've told the story before. Scottish Cup final '88. I watched the game with my dad, and after that game, I was a Celtic fan. I was 8 years old, and McAvenny scoring those goals. It was the fairy tale got me at that point, and obviously I didn't know I was signing up to 10 years of misery after that. But I got through those 10 years, and I've certainly enjoyed the last 25, 30 years, you know. So, but I think I'm gonna try and get a Celtic top to Sam somehow. I've got his tour manager's details, so I'll get an address and just. I think that'd be quite a nice surprise to get in the post, because he did, when I mentioned I was a Celtic fan, he did like talk favourably. He was like, "Oh, Big Ange, what do you think he's going to do at Spurs and everyone else?" So he was totally very, very clued up about football and stuff. So. Yeah.
See that thing with Everton. I know that we're digressing a wee bit. We're obviously Celtic related. We'll be back into Champions League action, signing action, and Rangers action in just a moment. But when I was down with Edgar Summertime, who you know is a brilliant musician, he's an Everton fan, and I met his girlfriend, who was explaining to me that they're all Everton and Celtic fans, and she was showing me the nieces and the nephews with their Celtic strips on. So I think that would be a good gift for them, without a doubt. JP, I'll tell you the Hibs story that this might have come from. Leading into the Gordon Strachan gig a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago actually, I told the story of going to Easter Road for the Gordon Ray testimonial. Manchester United played Hibs at Easter Road, right? I stayed in Pennycook. I went to the game, right? But there's a reason, it will all come to fruition. There's a reason I went to the game. And I spoke to Gordon Strachan. I spoke about it before I went into the gig, because he was writing in the programme notes about being a Hibby and growing up a Hibs fan and all this kind of stuff. And within about 10 minutes, my memory tells me it was within the first 10 minutes, Joe Tortolano belted him so hard that he landed on the running track. He got carried off. Tortolano got sent off. That wasn't my most memorable part of the game. My most memorable part of the game is that since Brian McClare left Celtic, I had followed Man United. You'll like this story, JP. Don't know if I've ever told you it. So I had actually gone to that game with my old man, right? But I put a Man United top underneath my tracksuit top. So I was supporting Man United. And my dad still slags me to this day because he thought we were going to get done in, because we were in the Hibs end when I took the tracky top off and I had the Man U strip underneath, because I loved Brian McClare. And obviously, as time has gone on, I have grown to love Mark Hughes as well. That's why I was at Easter Road. That's why I was at Easter Road. It wasn't because I was supporting Hibs. So let's move on swiftly. Loads of good comments coming in. Michael the Boy, a left back and striker required, especially for Europe. What a day we've got now with signings, you know, buzzing in, getting medicals. They're bound to be announced very, very soon. They might even be announced during the next 45 minutes or 50 minutes of the show. Left back, I agree with that. Striker, I'm going to put it out there, JP, and I'm going to ask you just while we're here, in terms of what we're going to bring in between now and the window slamming shut. I get the sense that during the transfer window, goalkeeper was definitely something we wanted, and I think striker was something we wanted. Then the centre-half issue happens with the injuries, and that becomes a priority. And I actually think that the goalkeeper's been shelved, and perhaps the striker's been shelved. I know that Sidney Van Hooydonk's been mentioned, and we were looking at the boy from Brøndby. I think that's been shelved as well, because I think that becomes an issue in January when we might be without some of our players because of the internationals in terms of South Korea and Japan. And at that point, I think we'll go back in for a striker. The goalkeeper situation, I think it's down to the fact that Joe Hart's found his form and a style of play that suits him. Or do you disagree with that, JP? Do you still think we need a goalie and a striker?
Well, I was only of the thinking that we needed a goalie if Siegrist was going to leave. Because I don't think Siegrist is a terrible backup. He's not a terrible keeper. It's just whether or not his head was in playing for Celtic and wanting to be at the club. And the noises that everybody's heard are that he didn't, or that he was wanting to maybe make a move over to Australia, relationship-wise. That might be complete speculation. It might be nonsense. But I'd only thought about getting another keeper in if Siegrist was going, because that would free up a space, and then you're getting somebody in who you're prepping to be the number one for next season. If we're going to come in and then Joe Hart was just going to get kicked into touch, as much as a lot of people want that to happen, I don't think he deserves that to happen to him. I don't think he's been as bad as people have made out. He's still a really good keeper. He's still got the experience that he's got. He's not by any means become a complete and utter liability to the point that he's not going to see us through the most important games this season, which are Scottish Premier League games. The Champions League, that's been obviously discussed about whether or not he's good enough at that level. Whether or not we're good enough as a whole at that level is a big question mark, because we've got what is essentially a new side going to go into this Champions League. It's not the same side as last season. We've lost 3 massive players, and that doesn't, I think Moy going, and Jota and Starfelt going. They were starters in the side, and the people we've brought in are not yet integrated fully. They've not found their feet. They've not found their form. So I don't think you can just go, oh well, Joe Hart's not good enough. Like there's a lot of people might not be good enough, but we'll have to wait and see how kind the draw is to us when we get it, because you know what the draw can do. It can throw up an absolute minefield where we're trying to just not avoid getting hammerings, because you don't saw last night. I mean, I don't know what fans of that club are expecting, but I mean, PSV are a really good side. I watched that game. PSV are good. I mean, it's maybe because they got through against them last season that they were just thinking, oh, we've got a real chance here. But
yeah.
PSV are many, many levels above that team, and levels above Celtic as well, I'm sure, because you look at the talent that was on display last night. I watched some of the way that they passed the ball. It was really impressive. So we've got a big task for us going into this Champions League. There's no doubt about it.
We'll talk about the draw, but I think you make a great point about Joe Hart in relation to the Champions League, because obviously it's happening today at 5 o'clock. Young James will be up at Celtic Park along with an as yet unnamed player to watch the draw live and all that kind of stuff. And then he's gone up to watch the Celtic story up at Glasgow as well, JP. And that is something that we'll come back to, because over the next couple of weeks, we will be giving away tickets for that particular event as well, the Celtic story. It's something that, you've got to go and watch that, because we've just been talking about heritage and, the reasons why you support this football club and the traditions and the origins of the club, JP, and to see it on the stage is something you really shouldn't miss. We'll be giving away some tickets as competition prizes over the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. But with regards to Joe Hart, I remember going into the Champions League, obviously season 2 under Ange, we go into the Champions League, and we looked at that point at the experience or lack of experience at that level within the Celtic squad. And JP, I spoke about Joe Hart, I spoke about the importance of Callum McGregor. So many players were making their debuts on that platform at that level. And that is, although 1 year down the line, some of them have got 4 or 5, some of them might have 6 Champions League games in their legs. That's not a lot of Champions League experience. And I think that, if the draw isn't kind to us, and by the way, by not being kind to us, I'm talking the glamour ties. You can keep them at the moment. You can keep those glamour ties just now, right? Let me know if you agree or disagree with that in the comments. But I think Joe Hart is huge for you in that situation, in that he's played, I double check the figures, he's played maybe less than Callum McGregor, but it's not, it's not that much less than Callum McGregor in terms of Champions League football. He's got the experience, and that's absolutely vital. So I agree with you, but I also think a big part of it, and this comes back into the St Johnstone game, because bizarrely enough, when you look at the possession, you look at the corners, you look at the shots on goal, it was a very dominant performance by Celtic, right? But on 2 occasions, Joe Hart had to make saves, JP, and it was like post 70 minutes, and he did it, and he did it well. There was none of this hearts and mouse moments because he's messing about with the ball at the back. When a simple clearance would do under Ange, we were getting back heels, shimmies, stray passes. All of that's been cut out of his game. So as well as the experience that we need, in Europe, I also think that the style that Rodgers has implemented since he's come in suits Hart better. And I think we're getting proper performances from him, rather than, he made a good save, but what about that time where the ball went astray and, put us under pressure? That's not happening now.
Was that the case on Saturday? Obviously, I haven't seen anything of the game at all. No highlights, nothing. I do know from speaking to people that were there that St Johnstone had a couple of chances in the last 15, 20 minutes or something, and did Hart pull off good saves?
Yeah, absolutely pivotal, because it was one of the games, and we've been there. I remember a game, in fact, was it not just after the 125th anniversary where we beat Barcelona? Was it no St Johnstone that came to Parkhead and beat us 1-0? I've seen it a couple of times.
It was the first time they'd done it since the Nick Dasovic goal in 1998 or something like that.
Nick Dasovic.
Yeah, the only game I've ever left early, willingly. Like, there was one I had to leave at half time because I was going to work. But the only game I've ever actually walked out of in disgust, because I knew we weren't going to score an equaliser, and we certainly weren't going to get 2. We were terrible. It was under Vengos. Nick Dasovic scored an absolute raker, like Tuesday night or something like that. It was just a horrible, horrible game. But that was the first time they'd won at Celtic Park since that game. So yeah,
I do remember it, and it felt like that, whereby we've managed the game, we've controlled the game, completely dominated possession, but on both occasions actually, and I mentioned this other day, not an opportunity to take a dig at Scales, but it'll lead us into the centre half discussion. It was Scales on both occasions who didn't defend properly, and Hearts made the saves, and he had to make them, JP, because you're looking at the game thinking, wow, imagine we're sitting here with a 1-0 defeat at that point. Then it really is meltdown. So yeah, very, very important. And it does lead us to the centre half, because the comment earlier on was around a left back. We are expecting at some point today, maybe even during this particular show, that we will announce the signings of a couple of players. Obviously are in the mix. We've got Nat Phillips, I'll come back to him in a second, and Paulo Bernardo, midfield. Obviously there are concerns about the fact that there's interest in Matt O'Reilly, and you kind of hope, in fact, you absolutely hope and pray that this isn't a replacement. We can't afford, like you said earlier, to lose another pivotal member of the team. We'll start with Nat Phillips. Interesting information about Nat is that his girlfriend is called Molly Maurice Gallagher, whose father, of course, is it Morris? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. What was interesting was last week, big Simon Weir, big Celtic fan. He's in my book that's above your head there. And he plays in the charity games as well. He's an actor, and he's a good pal of Irvin Welsh's. In fact, he was in the Grant and Star Cause. Yes. Yeah, you know it well. He's still got the jersey, the purple and green jersey. He has. Aye. By the way, you like keeping things. I'm not going to say you're a hoarder, because obviously I'm a bit like that myself. Simon's like that, and he's got loads of stuff from the movies and stuff that he's been in, right? And he's kept that. And whenever he can squeeze in a Celtic reference, he'll also do that. So he played a football manager in a movie, and he's wearing the big Wim Jansen puffer jacket and all this with the Celtic crest on it. But he was at the Irvin Welsh documentary screening. There was a premiere a week or two ago in Edinburgh. And he's sitting next to Lisa Morris, is that right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm messaging him the other day. I'm saying, do you realise who her daughter's boyfriend is and who he's signing for. So there you go. Nat Phillips is signing for Celtic from Liverpool, and hopefully we'll see Liam Gallagher up at a game at some point in this season to watch him in action. But from what I've seen, JP, that is exactly what we're needing at the moment, isn't it? Because I know there was talk about free transfers, loan to buy. Get the option in January to come back to this and say, right, what's the situation now? We're centre half. Do we sign this player? I think it's a brilliant signing.
Well, he's 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's not 2021 with no experience. He's coming in. He was on loan. Was he on loan at a German team or something like that? I think I looked at that at some point in the last couple of days when I saw we were linked with him. I'm sure he was on loan at a German team, but obviously played for Liverpool in the Premier League, and I think it makes sense that it's a short-term deal where we can evaluate how it is in January and see how he's getting on and how we're getting on with him and all that. But I mean, we absolutely need a centre half, and we could not let this transfer window close with what we've got when we've got the injuries that we've got, when we've got the schedule that we've got coming up in the next couple of months. Because realistically, like, if you say 8 weeks, it's never actually 8 weeks and they're back and they're ready and they just jump on the pitch and everything's fine. And then invariably there will be, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but invariably will be a possibility that it could be longer. That's just an estimate, isn't it? It's not as if you know exactly how long it's going to be. Obviously, on the flip side of that is it could be sooner, and you'd want that to be the case. But you're best preparing for the worst, because you can't do anything once the transfer window's closed. You're scunnered, and you don't want to be scunnered on a Tuesday night in Paris. Or I'm just looking at the pot 1, pot 2, pot 3. I've just got them next to me, and it's mildly terrifying. I'm not going to lie.
Mildly terrifying. The thing with Nat Phillips, you'll remember, obviously bringing in Carter Vickers, who was a younger player at the time. By the way, it was Stuttgart that he spent some time in. Yeah. I know that Wolfsburg were interested in him as well, by the way. So if Celtic managed to get him, it's obviously we're fighting off some kind of competition in that respect as well. But when we brought in Carter Vickers, it was, I thought there was a couple of transfer windows that Chris Jullien held up our progress a wee bit, because, and I don't mean this on a personal level, because you know what, I think the way that his career kind of ended at Celtic, you and I covered the game, didn't we? The Dundee United game where he's collided with a post. Mm-hmm. After that, there's a lot of kind of like revisionism, I think, in relation to Jullien. I thought, for the time that he was at the club and the important goals that he scored, he was a very important member of the side, and I think we'll look back on that. But there was a few transfer windows where it was like, what's happening with Jullien? Is he going to play? Is he coming back? Or are we going to ship him out? And I think that's why Stephen Welsh hung around for so long, because we had to keep the numbers in the door. And I think that's why Carter Vickers came in as a loan, not as an emergency. It's not as if we had the injury crisis, but he came in late in the day and he was a loan with an option to buy. And Nat Phillips, it's the same kind of model of deal that we've got with him, but from what I've seen, he really does look the real deal. Thing is, though, JP, how do you feel about throwing any player, into a game like Sunday, straight in?
I was talking to my mate about this last night, and he was, obviously post Rangers collapse in Eindhoven, getting very kind of upbeat about Sunday and everything else, and I was very reticent last night to get too jovial about that, because I didn't see a Rangers side that were utterly terrible and PSV were like absolutely, or PSV were just playing at their own pace. I didn't think Rangers were actually that bad in the game, and like they had chances. Matondo hit the post. There's danger in that Rangers team, whether people like to admit it or not. There is danger in that Rangers team. Cantwell, as much as he's an absolute like annoyance of a human being, I wouldn't want that guy at Celtic, regardless of his footballing prowess, because he just annoys me as an individual, regardless of what shirt he's wearing. But he can pick a pass. He's got a good range of passing, and I don't want that guy to do any further damage to the Celtic team. It was bad enough scoring in a meaningless game last season to get his wee TikTok post up to celebrate that. But I'm not in the way of thinking that this is going to be an easy game on Sunday, especially as the fact is there's a lot of players in that team who haven't experienced the poisonous lion's den of Ibrox. And regardless of what you say, like if they've got the wind in their sails early on, that is a horrible place to go and play football. If they've got their backs up, there's a horrible place to go and play football. There's a lot of poison in that ground. There's no support there on Sunday. There's nothing to look towards. There's nothing to remind you of who you're playing other than the shirt you're wearing and the shirts that are around about you. And I'm only guessing what that must be like. But as a new guy coming into that team who's not gone through that, who's not got the experience of the 3-0 game at Celtic Park where we absolutely pulled their trousers down, and they don't have that in their memory as being like, oh well, I've done this before. I've experienced a win against them. So throwing players in, because Chris was saying last night, oh well, we'll get Phillips in on Sunday and him alongside Lagerbielke. And I was like, they've barely met by the time Sunday comes along. It's not ideal to be throwing players into games of that magnitude, especially away. I know. Okay, the argument against that would be Alistair Johnston because he played so well in his first game at Ibrox. Like he really did. Like he was, but he was one player. There's a lot of players now there's like 4, maybe 5 players. You're talking. It's all very well Alistair Johnston coming in as one player and slotting into a system. That was so successful, as we've discussed before. Average or above average players in Ange's system could probably perform better. It's interesting. I mentioned Alan Morrison talking about that, and he's right, because there was probably players that were in that system that played better within the system. You take them out of that system, and it's like, what do I do now? Which I guess has been the case with maybe Ralston and Taylor in the last few games. Hopefully, with a bit more experience and repetition of what Rodgers is trying to do, then their form will be found again.
I think Maeda's suffered from that as well, JP. And he's a guy that...
in an interview, I read an interview where Maeda basically said, I'm so used to the manager's method, because he had it at Yokohama, and then he had it at Celtic, and then all of a sudden it's like someone's pulled the carpet from underneath him.
That's when he was saying that he was sitting there on a Saturday night wearing his Ange jumper watching Spurs, the highlights of the game, and he said, I'm kind of missing the way that he played. That was a bit bizarre, actually, when he was talking about that. Mount Cadath. Hello, Acsom team and fellow Celts. After seeing how poorly they played yesterday, I'm a bit more optimistic for the weekend. Let's have Palma run rings around their defenders. We'll talk about Palma. We're also going to be talking about Bernardo as well, who apparently is imminent. We always go on about sources, JP, and there's often sources who, when they speak, you step up and take notice. And obviously some of the information that's coming through are from very, very credible sources. So we are expecting Phillips and Bernardo in the door. A few people are actually saying that it's confirmed already. So we might check that out on the socials. You mentioned TikTok earlier when you were talking about Cantwell. I'm still not on TikTok, JP, and I'm not on Instagram either. And I've not decided whether or not that there's any point in me being on it. I think I get the impression I've kind of missed the boat. Is there any point in coming so late to the party? You know what I mean? I've already missed everything that's happened since.
It depends if you can be bothered with it or not. I mean, I'm kind of off the bus with Twitter, to be honest. I'm not sure if I'm going to hang about there for much longer, but because it isn't even Twitter anymore. But I like Instagram. The layout of Instagram is pretty good. You can keep up with people and whatnot in a bit more of an efficient way than Twitter. Twitter's a bit messy now, I think, to be honest. But what were you going to say about so Nat Phillips has been announced? Fine. Palma, I don't know anything about this guy. Obviously, I'm aware that he's got a good assist and goal return for his team over there. But I'm not seeing the guy play, so I can't start making proclamations about what he is going to do or what he's not going to do at Ibrox. I mean, if he gets thrown straight in, it's just, I don't know. I find it remarkable that people just think that, you know, we sign a player and we just put him in, and then all of a sudden he's just going to perform straight away. It doesn't work like that. We've seen evidence of maybe that happening every now and then, but I don't know. I think you've got. So if he comes in and doesn't do the business, does that mean he's not good enough? Like, I think that's really, really unfair to put that pressure on a player.
Through necessity, I can, absolutely throw Phillips in, right? I mean, through necessity. But the other guys, if they do indeed come in, I think there's a talking point straight off the bat with Palma. What I would say is, I looked at some interesting comment. I threw it out on the aforementioned Twitter/X platform just to see what the thoughts were in relation to him starting. And most people said, yeah, put him in instead of Maeda. That was, I think, one of the responses was that Maeda does really well against Rangers, which he did last year under a different system, of course. And we need his energy and we need his work rate and that kind of thing. I would tend, and I don't think it's playing safe, JP, I think it's for all the reasons you've mentioned already. I would tend, and I've probably changed my mind a wee bit since yesterday because I was going to go for Yang and Abada. I would either go for Yang and Abada, Maeda and Abada, without throwing in a new guy who I know is one of these players who you would categorise in the Novroski stakes, where you've actually brought him in to make an impact almost immediately. But with the circumstances of Ibrox and everything else that's going on, I think you look at the defence and you think it's a necessity that we put in Phillips, otherwise we wouldn't do it. But when you look at the midfield and you look at the wingers, I'd be far more cautious about throwing them in. And you think to yourself, well, you know what, we're going to have impact players either way, because you've now got Abada and you've got Palma, Maeda and Yang. So you're going to pick two from those four. The other two are sitting on the bench, which is a great proposition at 60, 65 minutes.
By the way, on that note, the last game I was at was Kilmarnock away, and looking at the bench at Kilmarnock away, it didn't really, there wasn't a lot on that bench that you're like, right, that's going to make a difference. And under Ange Postecoglou, there was times you looked at the bench and it was so strong. And I know that's not been helped by injuries, but it's not been helped by the sale of players as well. And there's been a lot of people saying about, I think like Chris Sutton said, I think it was a bad move by Celtic to let Carl Starfelt go. Carl Starfelt obviously wanted to go. So why would you be, like we've seen in the past, keeping players beyond the time that they want to be there, and it doesn't work out. So there's other folk as well that seem to be kind of like down on that sale, and it's like, well, guy's 28, wanted to try another league. I don't really see the point in holding the guy, hostage to play at Celtic when he's clearly wanting to go somewhere else. And regardless of the relationship aspect of it, which I think didn't really play into it, I think it was more he wanted to go and play in another league, earn more money at the tail end of his 20s. But in regards to the bench, you want to go into that game on Sunday with a strong bench. So I would be more inclined to start players that have experience of that rather than throwing in. I mean, like, I agree what you're saying about Phillips. Obviously, I think it's maybe a different kettle of fish with him, in that it's more necessity that we're starting him rather than choice. But if you've got an option, I would rather have a strong bench to affect the game and start with people who have got a bit of experience in this fixture. Maeda scored at Ibrox the last time he played there.
Yeah. I remember we started with James Forrest. That was an Alistair Johnson debut, I think. We put Forrest in front of him. Maybe to protect him in many ways. But by the way, don't say that I'm looking for Forrest to start. I'm absolutely not. Great player, great servant. I'm not wanting him to start at the weekend though. I think any of the two, Maeda and Yang plus Abada, and people might say, why Abada? He's not been great in the last couple of games. He's not actually been great. But I do think that certain players, JP, thrive against certain opposition or at particular stadiums. And Abada's one of the guys, and I would be starting with him at the weekend. What about the midfield then? Because obviously O'Reilly's been in the news recently, and hopefully he's still a Celtic player by the time we come out the window. McGregor is the first name on the team sheet. Don't care what anybody says. I am not even humouring the suggestion that Cal Mack should be dropped at any point. He's a captain of the football club. But the other midfielder, I guess, is the one with the question mark. So we've started with, we dropped Hatate, which was an unusual move, but he's injured. David Turnbull started a few games. Holm has actually started the game. And we might have Bernardo in the door by the time that this game kicks off. He's an attacking style player, JP, more of a attacking midfielder. So I don't know if that then means that we know that O'Reilly can play in a defensive position. We know that because he did it in the Champions League for us. But I don't think it's his best position. But at the same time, I've been shouting for Iwata to be playing as a number 6, if you like, with McGregor a wee bit more advanced as an 8, orchestrating the tempo, and then O'Reilly more as a 10, but no as an out-and-out 10. I don't think he is that. So, yeah, that would be my midfield, although Bernardo comes in. I don't know if Rodgers rates Iwata. He's never given him a minute of football this season, not a minute of competitive action. And if he's bringing in a player, he obviously believes in the players bringing in. Do you throw in Bernardo in the midfield? Do you play with Turnbull? Do you bring in Iwata? I mean, loads of options.
I mean, I'd be reluctant to be throwing in guys that are just arriving into that to start. I think that's a wee bit maybe wild to be talking about that. I would rather have some sort of settled midfield, which is without doubt McGregor and O'Reilly. The third jersey, I wouldn't be against David Turnbull starting. I just think the environment, I don't think he'd be fazed by it. I think he would maybe relish it as well, getting the responsibility of being a starter in that fixture, which is something that has evaded him. Possibly, I don't recall Turnbull starting at Ibrox. Turnbull's not a bad football player,
no,
by any means. It's all about getting the whole team playing well, and Turnbull can play well in a good Celtic team. I've got no doubt about that. With regards to the wingers, just going back to that, it looks like they are much maligned / celebrated left back Borna Barisic may be out for Sunday, and they may have to play a right back at left back in Sterling. Now, as much as I'm saying PSV were great last night, Sterling did not look good when he came on, and they know that as well, because I heard some of them talking about it, or I read some of them talking about it, and I would be putting somebody on that left back position that can do some damage, and Abada could be that guy. I'd say. But I was just going back to that. But the midfield, if Bernardo does come in today or tomorrow, well, it'll be today, won't it? I don't know if I would just. I think it's a bit disrespectful to the midfielders that are there and fit. You've got to think about morale as well. It's like, what does that say to David Turnbull if you just bring in a midfielder and fling him in at Ibrox?
One training session.
I just don't. It doesn't sit well with me. You've got to think about morale and camaraderie, and you're going to need to go to these players when injuries mount up or suspensions mount up, and I think it would be a hell of a vote of confidence in the players that maybe haven't performed so well so far to be able to go there and give them the opportunity to prove that they're good enough. And the utilisation of Kyogo as well. I mean, Kyogo has to be got to play to his strengths on Sunday. There's no question that whatever way he enjoys playing the best, that's the way that the team should be serving him. That it shouldn't be about trying to make him play differently or anything like that. We've seen his goal return in the last 2 years. Whatever way will utilise that best, get back to doing that. There's no question.
Totally. Playing off the shoulder of the last defender, beating the offside trap with his pace, getting down the throat of the goalkeeper, hitting the front post for the cross getting zipped in from the wing. That's the Kyogo that we know. And I think what he's been doing recently is coming really deep to try and get involved in the game. And it's almost as if he's been instructed, because I remember we commented on it when we were playing in the pre-season, because O was doing it. So it was a feature of whoever was playing as your striker that he was expected to come right deep into the midfield area, right into the centre circle area, almost win the ball, collect the ball, and then start the move off. And you think, well, like you say, Kyogo has got the proven record playing the other way, the way that he's been playing in the last couple of years. So I think that against Rangers again, it's one of the things you play to your strengths, JP.
What is the situation with O? How long? What's his
prognosis? I think was it 6 weeks originally that he was out for. So we're probably looking for another month. And, again, I felt that a striker at various times had to come in, but I can see our thinking with regards to, prioritising the left winger who's in the door, the centre half who apparently is in the door. Midfielder, yeah, we do need something different in there. I've got to say, I thought Awata would get a run out, but I don't know if he's got a future. Goalkeeper and striker. But I guess what they're looking at as well is the fact that, Maeda can play through the middle, as can Abada. Haksabanovic apparently can play through the middle as well. But you know what? My feelings on him and Bernabe have kind of changed over the last 10 days or so, JP, to the point where I wouldn't blink if the pair of them left in this transfer window. I would be quite happy to see the back of them.
Yeah, I was disappointed with that social media post. That is one of the pitfalls of Instagram, is that you see, because also most of the players are on Instagram, and I don't follow Haksabanovic, but I did obviously see the post, and you're just like, man, don't do that. Like, keep it in house, keep it to yourself if you're frustrated or whatever, but don't put it out there. It's a really, really bad look. You had a good rapport with the Celtic fans. Maybe that'll bolster it for some people who will be like, oh, well, he's not getting a chance, and he's good enough and all that. He's not good enough. He hasn't been good enough. I don't dislike the guy as a player, but I don't really subscribe to folk airing their grievances in public like that. It's just not really becoming as much as in the exact same way as I didn't really enjoy Holmes' post where he was using disrespectful lyrics on the Aberdeen player. I don't like seeing players post stuff about things that should be kept in house, and then it inspires other people to, like you say, obviously Bernabe liked it or whatever, and you're like, come on, like really? And then there's like somebody texted me and was like, well, WhatsApp rumour Rodgers is going to be gone by Monday and all this sort of stuff, and there's a player revolt and everything else, and you're just like,
it feeds that. It feeds that kind of stuff, doesn't it? It really does. And the thing is as well, JP, if that's your colleague in any walk of life and they're moaning about their workplace and all that, what you're thinking, certainly as a fan, right, is when you're a Celtic player, what you're doing is looking at the fixture list and you're thinking, right, the Rangers game. That's a big one that's standing out the first phase, right? Champions League draw, Champions League game. And you're going to do everything in your power to start those games. If you've got any ambitions as a footballer, you'll do everything in your power. So after a performance whereby, Rodgers has got the players to go and applaud the fans for the support that the fans have given them that day and every single game. And they've not got I say some of the players might not have got the response that they expected, JP. I think Rodgers should have expected the response that they got when they went up to the fans, right? But some of the players have obviously thought, right, I'm not being appreciated here as a footballer. And it's right, you're going to have to grow a thicker skin than that if you're going to play for Celtic at this level. But between that and the Rangers game, this big fixture that should be starred on your calendar, he's thrown that out. You think to yourself, mate, if you were anywhere near getting in that team, you've just taken 3 or 4 steps backwards. So, it's only him that's going to suffer, I guess, because it's not as though if we lose him, we're losing 20, 30 goals a season, either in assists or goals scored.
Exactly.
So
you're losing a guy that's threatened to do well, but hasn't ever really done well. And he has been given opportunities. It's not as if he's like been completely frozen out and bombed out of the team. I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, will he go by the end of today? I don't know. If obviously there was chat that he wanted to leave before that social media post. There was murmurings that he'd spoken to the club or spoken to his agent or whatever. So I don't know. We could be a player down in Haksabanovic come Sunday, which does make me kind of want to get a striker in. I know if O's back in a month, but I just felt at Kilmarnock it was so frustrating just not having, a Giakoumakis to come off the bench or someone to really just barge into them. I know it sounds so cliched and everything else, and it probably is, but they were playing the game a certain way, and we just didn't have the right ammunition to get anything from that game. I mean, my mate Chris said you could have played another 2 hours and we wouldn't have scored. It was just didn't seem like it was going to be one of those days because we didn't have the necessary squad to combat it. And obviously, the Greg Taylor elbow, the fact that he was off the park, the penalty that had Haksabanovic not tried to get a run of tens in terms of diving. I mean, he did get brought down, but the way he went down was just so kind of theatrical. I can kind of see why we didn't get it. But in the days of VAR, you'd think that when you see the foot going into the ankle, as you saw in the close-up, that it would have been a penalty. But we shouldn't have been clinging on to get a penalty against Kilmarnock. We should have been, Matt O'Reilly's chance early on, how he doesn't put his laces through that and score, I don't know.
But then St Johnstone, Matt O'Reilly had 3 brilliant chances against St Johnstone as well. Yeah. Your point there talking about Haksabanovic, JP, I was just thinking it myself, right, because we spoke earlier about the options off the bench for the wings. If you think about wingers that we've got at the club, right, you've got Mikey Johnson coming back from injury. Yes, he's a winger. He plays in Haksabanovic's left side. James Forrest, Marco Tilio, injured. Yang, Abada, Palma, Maeda. So if you're Haksabanovic, right, and you've got 7 guys fighting for that jersey, plus yourself, 8 people trying to get that jersey, because most of them can play both wings, right? You don't behave like that because you're just going right down that pecking order, massively going down that pecking order. Michael Ross, we're going to get to Champions League chat in a wee second. Left back, keeper, but also a striker. I get that. JP agrees with you, Michael. A striker, it would be good to have a third one on the books, especially when you think that we've got 8 wingers. You would like to have 3 strikers. Patrick Harold, what a lovely afternoon for a Champions League draw, comrades. Have a great day. And you as well, Patrick. Yeah, as I said, James will be up at Celtic Park for that. The tide is turning, says Jungle Line. We spoke about this yesterday, John and I, talking about the fact that it seems that there's been a bit of doom and gloom. And we said, you know what? Rangers could get knocked out tonight and we could confirm a signing. And then we've got the Champions League draw tomorrow. So it's all starting to happen, JP. The positivity is filtering through.
No. It is positive. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not. They were always going to go out last night. Whether it was 5-1 or 2-1, it doesn't really matter.
I agree with that.
There was no way they were getting. If they'd have got through last night, it would have been one of the greatest achievements, that I've ever seen. The luckiest and greatest achievements I've ever seen, because you don't beat PSV 2 seasons in a row in the Champions League qualify the playoffs for the Champions League. It just doesn't happen. They play PSV 10 times. PSV win 9. Rangers win 1. Like that is the odds, and it shows you how hard it is to get into the Champions League and why we have fallen so many times at the same hurdle, because it's designed to get the best teams into the competition. Fortunately for us, we've actually won the league, which is the first thing you need to do. It's called a Champions League for a reason. So you win the league, you get into the Champions League. That's how it was at the start, and it still is the same. But obviously, we've had to, because of the coefficient, we've had to negotiate qualifying. But the first thing you need to do is win your league. I'm not their initial. Any Rangers fans' initial reply to that is, "Oh, well, you're only there because of us." And it's like, well, no, we're there because we won the league. You moron.
I know. That's incredible. But see, the thing there, JP, right, is with regards to a lot of opinions that people give, they've only read them somewhere else. And the minute you start asking them to try and justify the opinion, because it's not theirs, they can't back it up with facts or how they formed that opinion. I find that quite satisfying, actually, online. Mark Fairfield, I'm going to bring this one up, right? What striker is going to come in to play third fiddle? I'm bringing it up, Mark, because I think that's why it's important to buy players at different levels of their development. And I'm not going to use the word project, although the irony is I just have. But you bring in a player, JP, at a stage of their development in terms of the age profile, the games that they've played, whereby you're never going to say to them, you're going to be third choice here. I think everybody that comes in, you're saying, right, it's up to you to win the jersey. But if they're at a different stage of the development, so when we bring Jota in, for example, Jota's playing reserve football for Benfica. He's been loaned out. His career's not really panning out the way that you would have hoped. You bring him in, and at that point, right, how many of us knew much about Jota? Probably not many. But it's up to him to win the jersey and then to develop. You then bring in another Jota style in terms of age profile. You can bring him in 2 years later, and it's a cycle. So I don't think anybody comes in as a third choice or even a second choice. They come in because we think that they're going to bolster our squad somehow. And if you're a 21-year-old, you're going to be less, I think, throwing the toys at the pram than if you're 26, 27, 28, JP, because you know that there's time to develop. And I think O's a good example of that. I think we brought in O. No way you expect them to play every single game, particularly with Kyogo firing on all cylinders over the last couple of seasons. But if you do enough and you get your opportunity, because Giakoumakis got his opportunity, I think his biggest issue for me, JP, was the fact that as soon as, Kyogo comes back and he's dropped to the bench, there's a test there of character. There's a test of attitude, and I think he failed that test because that's when he started making his mouth go, and then it's the egg timer on the socials and all that carry on. He would have got a lot more game time between that point and him leaving the club, or he might not even have left the club if he just knuckled down, took his chances, scored the goals. So I don't think anyone comes in to play third fiddle, is my point.
No, I mean, I hadn't heard of Jota before he signed. I hadn't heard of Carter Vickers before he signed.
Starfield?
No, never heard of Starfield either. And there will be guys out there if our scouting network is as good as we think it is, and as good as Brendan Rodgers thinks it is, because he's obviously talked it up quite a lot in his press conferences to say that there's a steady line of players. So you'd think that Nat Phillips hasn't just come out of the sky and has been on a list of, right, if this happens, this is where we go. If this happens, this is where we go. And so he'll have been scouted in that manner. So you'd like to think that there is players that fall into the what happens if we get a striker injury. Is there profiles of players that fit our narrative that we can bring in either in a short-term period or like an actual structured deal with a loan to buy or something like that.
I'm looking at some of the latest stuff because obviously this happens live and it does look as though Nat Phillips is signed. There's also a suggestion that Ayeti has left the building. I seen yesterday we were looking at a transfer fee $500,000. So
really,
a tenth of what was shelled out for Albion Ayeti, which is frightening. There's Franny McKeown. Ayeti finally leaves Celtic and he's away to Turkish football. So there you go. Good luck to Albion Ayeti. Hopefully you can get your scoring boots on and enjoy the rest of your career. Didn't work out for Celtic. Right, Champions League, JP, right? Young James on the blog last night, it went out this morning. He gave us what he thought was the dream draw and what was the nightmare draw, right? Now, it all depends on how you look at it. Because last season, Kyler McGregor was saying, I want to get Real Madrid. That's fighting talk this season. That's like, no, you don't. You do not want to get that. You've experienced that now, right? Flip side to that, Ange Postecoglou, if I want to experience Real Madrid, I'll go on their tour of their stadium. Right. I'm kind of divided, right? There's no way it's going to go exactly how we want. It never does, right? But I think the suggestion, and it was James that mentioned it, and it's a great shout, is Feyenoord and Porto so that we can avenge the 2 European finals that we lost to them. Plus Red Star Belgrade. But it'll probably be something like Feyenoord, Porto and Arsenal. But yeah, Feyenoord, Porto and Red Star Belgrade is what James has suggested. And I would go for that every day of the week.
In terms of I don't know. I said a few weeks ago that I'd want to get somewhere that I haven't been to, because obviously I'd like to go to one of these away ties if possible. And yeah, I'm 43 years old. I've had the opportunity to go to various places in Europe over the time. I am not a wealthy person by any stretch of the imagination, but I have had the opportunity to go to Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain. So I've done those. So for that reason alone, I would like to get, if you're talking pot one, I would actually like to get Feyenoord, because I've never been to Rotterdam. I've just never been, and it would be a fairly reasonable task to get there. It's not as if you're going to have to get 2 or 3 flights or anything like that. You should be able to get there fairly easily. And also for the ease of it, I mean, that would be my choice from pot 1 straight away. And also there's the Henrik Larsson connection. I've always had a Feyenoord strip. I got it in
Reggie Blinker connection.
Yeah. I got it in shops in Falkirk because they used to do the following season. You could get all last season's European strips for like half price and stuff. So I got a Feyenoord strip. So that'd be my choice. Pot 1, pot 2. I would actually say, I mean, Real Madrid, Man United would Man United would be good. I mean, purely because they're not firing on all cylinders quite yet. I mean, but they've got the ability to do some serious damage. But I've never been to Man United away in Champions League. I've done Ryan Giggs' testimonial. That's the only Celtic Man United game I've
been. Did you do the Gordon Ray testimonial?
I didn't.
I mean, that's a big question. 1988. No, that would be a good fixture.
Atletico Madrid would be pretty good as well. I'd want to avoid Leipzig. I'd want to avoid Porto, and I'd definitely want to avoid Arsenal. So I'd be leaning to Dortmund, of course. Dortmund are there. Stick on pot 2, Dortmund, 100%. Feyenoord, Dortmund, pot 3. I would want to go. I didn't get to experience Lazio last time, so if we got Lazio, I wouldn't be upset. Done Copenhagen, done Milan, Shakhtar. We owe them one. We should have beaten them at least one of those 2 games when we played them. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking revenge missions, I'd go for Shakhtar. So yeah, I'd want Feyenoord, Dortmund, and I'd say Shakhtar. That would be my choice.
Well, I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. Right. But since you've been talking about, I'm going for revenge this year, and I'm going Feyenoord, Porto, and Shakhtar. There you go.
All right, okay.
There's the 3. But obviously, they don't have Mudryk now, do they? Is Shved still there?
But that's the thing. Mudryk was the reason that they got 2 points against us because he scored in both games and then signed to Chelsea for 80 million or whatever it was. So he was the difference in those games.
He was.
I don't know what they've done transfer-wise since then, but it would be real. I really, really want to beat them at Celtic Park because it would right a wrong, I think.
It'd just be great to see Rodgers and Shved embracing at the end of the game as well. The nightmare group that young James suggested, and by the way, there's a few permutations that would be nightmares, let's be honest. Man City, Real Madrid, AC Milan. That's what James was saying. I mean, that would be quite a frightening group. But you know what?
Couldn't bear City. I can't stand them with every fibre of my being. I can't stand that football club. And I can't stand Haaland. It's like cheating at football. It's like champ manager on cheat mode. I don't want to be anywhere near that team. The fact that they won the cup last season was like I said at the time, a bit of football died for me at that moment because it was just like, show us the receipt. Because the way that they and other teams like them have changed football for the worse, in my opinion, is horrendous. So I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want them to have an opportunity to make us their plaything for a night and just score a barrel load of goals against us and Haaland to get another hat trick or something like that. I don't want anything to do with that at all. So they can. We'll get them now. I've said that.
They can do one. They can do it. Well, I mean, obviously, the aforementioned Liam Gallagher might come to the games to watch his future son-in-law play as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be 5:00 this evening, and I realised we couldn't get Porto and Arsenal. That was just me talking nonsense earlier. I'm going for Feyenoord, Porto, and Shakhtar Donetsk. I'm going on a revenge mission. That's what it's all about. And I think that by the time we play our first game, hopefully some of the new signings will have bedded in. Obviously, by bedded in, you're maybe playing 1 or 2 games. Yeah, it's an interesting situation to be in because, you know, there has been occasions in the past where you want that glamour tie, but JP, but I just want to progress. That's what Brendan spoke about when he came back, progressing in Europe. You want to improve on the European stage. You don't progress getting beat 7-0 from anybody.
No, we've done the glamour. we've had the glamour ties. So I mean, even Napoli, that would be amazing to go to Napoli, to Naples. Like, that would be. Like, there you go. I was saying that before that comment came up. I mean, how that stadium, and having watched the Maradona documentary, would be unreal to experience that as a Celtic fan over there. You know, I think I don't know how the other side were embraced when they had to go there. No, they didn't get to go, did they? There was a ban on the fans, wasn't there?
That's right.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure Celtic fans would be welcomed in Naples. I wouldn't be shocked.
You're right, and the murals and the museum, all that kind of stuff would be phenomenal to see. But yeah, the point is, you said that they weren't allowed to go. Well, yesterday, I'm going to put it out there for anybody who is in the chat, because there's over 1,400 watching live at the moment. Anyone who was in yesterday, apologies if you had to put up with any of the infiltrators, let's just call them. There aren't any in today for some reason. Don't know why, JP. Don't know if they're greeting into their cornflakes. I'm not quite sure. But the reason for that is that yesterday was a full house, as you know. There was 4 of us on the show. Was there 4 or was there 3? Anyway, I was presenting it, and it's difficult to keep the conversation going, but also keeping an eye on any dodgy comments. So it was afterwards that I was able to go in and dig them out and get them blocked. So apologies if you had to put up with any of that nonsense. I don't want that to ruin your experience of getting involved in the Celtic chat. That was one thing Raina Hatati brought up. So yeah, thank you very much for bringing it to my attention. If there is an issue, we'll get it sorted. That is for sure. And James yesterday, in all his wisdom, suggested that we take Acsom on the road to at least one of the away games. So he's planted a seed, JP, and I think it sounds like a good idea to me. And we'll take a camera with us as well, and maybe do some filming and content and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. 5 o'clock tonight. James is up at Celtic Park. He's taller than me. I don't know why I'm calling him wee, but he'll be there to see the draw live. We'll obviously react to that on the socials, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And of course, the Celtic story, he will be going to that this evening, and we will be running competitions over the next fortnight.
See this man tonight, Mr. Natini.
Oh, you're going to that?
The bold Paolo, good Celtic fan. I win the Royal Highland Centre, so I'm going to get to go and enjoy the site as a punter, as opposed to be. Exactly. As opposed to running around and driving a buggy around at top speed around the outskirts of the backstage area. So I'm looking forward to that.
Did you know, right? Here's a wee fact for you before we go. Paolo Nutini, when he was just Paolo Nutini that nobody knew about, a wee guy for Paisley, he wrote into the Celtic View, right, did Paolo. He wrote a song. He wrote a Celtic song. And they printed it.
I think I did know. Yeah.
I think he was maybe 14 or 13. The kind of thing I used to do. Used to draw strips and all that. We used to do that kind of stuff. JP, Paolo Nutini is no different. I wonder how the song went though. I wonder if he would ever record it. Yeah, there you go.
If I see him tonight, I'll ask him. There's a chance I might see him tonight afterwards, so I'll ask him about it.
I love Paolo. Superb. Thanks everybody for getting involved. As I said before, well over 1,400. JP sent us a couple of jerseys for our initiative, and there is an Acsom listener just outside by the name of Michael who has been in touch. He's come through and he's also handing some stuff in so we can raise some funds for wee Jamie Tierney.
By the way, I want to know who the signatures are on that jersey, because I don't know. I'm rubbish at identifying signatures, but I assume that it was given to me by a colleague at work, Lee Worrell, formerly of Dogs Die in Hot Cars, the mid-noughties indie band. Now my boss. And,
that was a great album. See that album they released?
Well, we were talking about it at the weekend. One of the tour managers, I think it was Johnny Marr's tour manager, actually said that he had that album and was a fan of the band. When I said, "Oh, we used to be in that band," he was like, "Oh, no way."
I was a fan.
But that strip, I assume that it is the players of that season, that era, that have signed that top. It's just they're very, very hard to distinguish. So if people know their signatures or whatever, then I'd be interested. I'd love to know who's all on that top. I mean, I'm sure you could probably figure it out, but it's quite a skill to be able to figure out someone's signature, I think.
It is, and it's good that they're actually started to put their squad names. Barry, the way we're dealing with this is some of the jerseys that are being handed in are actually framed and signed already. So they are going to be the first ones that we are going to make available for bidding and for raffles, etc. We'll do it on the social media channels and also our live events, which we normally do once a month. Things like the fully signed jersey that JP gave us, we're going to get them framed before, obviously, we can do that. And then we're just getting loads of jerseys with nothing on it, and we're going to get them signed first as well. So we're going to do it in 3 stages. So it won't be just one big auction. We'll be doing it gradually, and then all the cash that comes in, we'll be filtering that through to Jamie's family to help him as well. If you enjoy what Acsom does with our free daily content, our live events, and everything else that we're involved in, then you can vote for us. We're up for a few awards, 4 different awards, and the link is underneath the video. If you fancy sending JP and I and a few others down to Liverpool for a wee night of an award ceremony, we might get suited and booted for that, JP, and go down there. Vote for us. We would really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Thank you to the 1,400 of you for tuning in, and thank you to JP Mason for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.